It is time for Trump. Trump's going to have to say, listen, this is my entire domestic program right here, and you need to get it across the finish line. And if you don't, there's going to be repercussions.
Good morning, I'm Anna Palmer.
And I'm Jake Sherman.
And welcome to the Daily Punch, brought to you by Punchbowl News. It's Friday, TGIF, June 27th, 2025. Let's get into the mix. Here are your Washington headlines of the day. Number one, the big question. Can the Senate make its July 4th reconciliation deadline? Number two, John who? The Texas delegation takes a pass at endorsing Senator John Cornin in his primary race. And number three, the Iran war powers resolution is likely to fail. All right, Jake, let's get to it. There are big questions in the Senate and in Washington about whether Senate Republicans can actually make their July 4th deadline. President Donald Trump is engaging in hand-to-hand combat, finally calling senators. But for as many potential solutions, there still remain many, many questions and problems with this piece of legislation.
Yeah, so a few things here. Number one, TGIF, but there is no Friday this week because they're going to be here potentially all weekend. But I'll say this. We were talking about this yesterday in the gallery. John Thune did not file cloture last I checked. I mean, something I guess could have happened after. I don't think it did, but he did not file cloture on nominations for the weekend. So, there's a chance that people are just going to leave town in the Senate as Republicans kind of continue to struggle on getting their reconciliation bill into shape. So, can they get it done by July 4th, which is 1 week from today? I'll leave that very difficult question to you, the audience. And I think a lot of people are wondering this because July 4th is an important holiday for members of Congress. Not, they all love America, but they also are in parades. They're marching. They're going to fireworks, fairs, barbecues. I mean, this is a big time for people to be home and out about in their communities. So no one likes, and not to mention congressional delegations abroad. So this is it's a big weekend for members of Congress. They had hoped, Anna, to begin voting on this in the Senate, to begin voting on this package on Wednesday. Wednesday has passed. They did not begin voting on this package. Today is Friday. We will see if they begin voting on this package today. I don't think they're going to begin voting today. I don't think the problem is John Thune doesn't have 50 votes or 51 votes to proceed. So the parliamentarian is knocking out provisions left and right. Last night they knocked out, and by the way, since yesterday's podcast, they knocked out the provider tax provision, a critical revenue raiser for the bill. That happened like 8 o'clock yesterday morning. So they've got problems.
I mean, there's a lot of scrambling, right? I mean, you've got the parliamentarian making changes. You've got Republican staffers on finance trying to kind of massage the language, go back as fast as they possibly can. This isn't surprising, right, that this is happening. I think what the problem really is this deadline, right, where you have the bill text isn't even out. They haven't even finished it yet. The ink isn't dried. And Thune's trying to kind of gauge whether or not he can muscle this through.
Yeah. As I said yesterday, absent the deadline, I would say they're a month away from getting this done, because I think, they have to go through a vote-a-rama on the Senate floor. Then it has to get through the House. And remember, the House is not comfortable with where this bill is. They're not. And it's not only the provider tax, the Medicaid. Yesterday, Steve Scalise said to me, the Senate is going to have to reverse its green energy tax credit phase out schedule and make it like the House's. They're not doing that. So the problems abound here. I mean, let's say they get it through the Senate Monday morning. Let's say they get to a vote-a-rama. They get it to the House, the House Monday morning. And Johnson brings the House back Monday night. So first of all, the 72-hour rule will mandate that they probably can't get this to the floor until Thursday. So they'd have to use those 3 days to pass the exact same version that the Senate passed. Not amend, Johnson can't say, well, we just got to get through this phase. This is the phase now.
Well, I mean,
This
the
is the
bigger
phase.
question, though, Jake, I really do think is, and we write about it this morning, the frustration that Trump is having with the process of how, quote unquote, slow it's going. Although for the Senate, it's actually moving at quite speed,
Yeah.
I would say. I
Yeah.
mean, just in behind the scenes, Trump, kind of airing grievances, but like when and what power does he have to actually push members to vote for something that they don't like? He's been able to muscle through a bunch of things in this Congress where he seems to defy gravity. And I think the question is that period and that phase over, or is there something that we're missing right now that Trump does in the next 24 to 48 hours that actually turns some votes here for Senate Republicans?
He'll have to be the hammer. That's it. I mean, it's funny. He's saying first of all, one thing to mention, yesterday during an event at the White House, I didn't get into this in AM this morning, but yesterday at the White House, he kept saying the bill cuts taxes on Social Security. It doesn't do that. That's not in the bill. So that was a priority of the president's on the campaign trail. But this bill, there are provisions for seniors, so I'm not saying they're not, but this bill does not cut tax on Social Security. That's number one. That's my end of my rant.
Rant one finished. Go.
Now, he also has told people he prefers the House's provider tax framework. I didn't know he was that in the weeds on the provider tax, but we'll assume that he is. That also has bird problems. So, it is time for Trump. Trump's going to have to say, listen, this is my entire domestic program right here, and you need to get it across the finish line. And if you don't, there's going to be repercussions. And by the way, for a lot of people in the House, some people in the House, that's not going to matter. And also left out there is SALT. SALT's not finished yet. We assume that the House, if the Senate passes this on Monday, the House goes on Thursday. That's July 3rd. So if you had a vacation scheduled for July 4th, which I don't.
Vacation? What vacation?
Yeah, what is vacation? Is that English or is that another language? You're going to have to cancel that because, and by the way, there will be some members of Congress that might not cancel theirs, just might take a pass on it. Democrats, I don't think any Republican would do that. But so that's where we are. And I think this artificial deadline is incredibly tight and getting close to slipping out of reach. I'm not doubting anybody. They could get it done. It just seems a week is a very short period of time to get this bill through the House and the Senate.
Yeah, the next 24 to 48 hours for the Senate going to be critical to see how John Thune handles this. Are they able to start the vote-a-rama?
Yeah.
Is he able to get those 50 votes? That is going to be without that, this isn't getting done. All right, on to the number 2 story of the morning, Jake. Man, this story is so good because those internal delegation politics are always tricky. And the John Cornyn primary race kind of puts that really into focus, right? Cornyn has been in the Senate, in Congress, a very long time, but not a single member of his delegation is saying, yeah, we're with you, John, not with Paxton in the primary.
26 years in statewide office, in the Senate since 2002, was Texas Attorney General, was a Texas Supreme Court judge, and, Brian Babin, out of it. Keith Self, oh goodness, no. Pat Fallon, Ken Paxton's a dear friend. Randy Weber, why should I?
Doesn't even seem like they're having a hard time with it.
Pete Sessions, Nathaniel Moran, Chip Roy, August Pfluger, Dan Crenshaw, all taking a pass on endorsing at this moment. Ronnie Jackson, Wesley Hunt declined to comment. They might even join the race against Cornyn. Cornyn's camp has said, Anna, that people don't endorse before the primary. Well, Cruz endorsed Cornyn's 2020 bid in 2018, and Cornyn endorsed Cruz's 2018 bid in 2017.
So I guess they might. They might actually.
Yeah, that's actually not true. I don't know where they got that from. This is an incredibly tough race for Cornyn against Ken Paxton. And, we'll see how it shakes out. It is true that the filing deadline has not come yet. And it is true that some of these folks might endorse Cornyn. I will say this, covered a lot of these things. It is very rare that an incumbent senator, the dean of the delegation, longest serving Texas Republican, it does not have endorsements before a filing deadline. Like, the reason you might not, maybe it could hurt, maybe the theory is it could hurt some of these guys in their primary. And by the way, do endorsements matter like this? I don't know. But Anna, says a lot, doesn't it?
With friends like these, what more do you need? I think the bigger question here for Republicans that is going to come into focus here is just they don't want to be spending tens of millions of dollars in Texas, right? And
No, they
I
do
think there's
not.
big concern that, Paxton is loved by the far right and certainly at the state level, but whether or not he can win a statewide election, that to me is just got to be really frustrating. If you're sitting at the NRSC and you're saying, hey, we're looking to go into Michigan, we're looking to expand the map, and then the bright red cherry of Texas is now all of a sudden going to be potentially in play.
Yeah, it would be a fortune. And there are some who want Cornyn out and who want to get another candidate, potentially Wesley Hunt, maybe someone else, to run against Paxton head to head. Not saying that would work. Not saying Cornyn can't win. The polls don't look good, but that's just something that a lot of people are saying behind the scenes.
All right, let's move on to the number 3 story of the morning. We write Senator Tim Kaine's war powers resolution for Iran is likely to fail when senators consider the measure on Friday night as Republicans look to avoid a fight with President Donald Trump. This has been kind of in the ether here for at least the last week or so. Democrats wanting to push a war powers resolution following what's been happening in Iran. What say you, Jake? I mean, the Republicans pretty much are in line that they're not supportive of this effort.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of them who voted for it in previous incarnations, voted for War Powers Act, War Powers resolutions in the past. I will say the ceasefire has kind of taken some of the juice out of this. The fact that Israel is not currently bombing Iran and the United States, even more importantly, is not bombing Iran, has taken the sting out of this. Tom Massey, Kentucky Republican, we scooped a couple days ago that he was going to hold off on his resolution because that ceasefire, which is so far, except for one blip, has held. So it'll be an interesting vote, to be honest with you, because it does expose some hypocrisy, of course, because there are Republicans who have voted for it in the past. But this is just another chapter in Congress ceding its authority to the administration.
All right, Jake, we are closing out this Friday with the new feature, Ask Us Anything. We solicited questions via the podcast as well as to our premium subscribers and got quite a few questions. I think we can go back and forth doing a few of them. We'll see if folks find this interesting or not worthwhile. We'll try it every couple of weeks here. So I'm going to start here. We got some questions, unsurprisingly, about Congress. Jake, here's a question for you. What are the actual chances the Senate passes the OBBB by, say, Monday, EOD, regardless of what happens, and when in the House after?
OBBB, I think it's by end of day Monday, I would say I'd put it close to 50%. I mean, the Senate works fast when it wants to.
Yep. Little Senate magic. Never hurt anybody.
All right, Anna, question for you. I recently moved from Washington, D.C. to Anna's home state of North Dakota. Wow, this is really deep.
I mean, what amazing.
I'm curious, Anna's favorite places to visit or some things to do in North Dakota and what advice you would have for someone transitioning to life on the quiet Great Plains.
It is certainly quieter than Washington, D.C. It's been a while since I've lived in D.C., but I do visit quite a bit. I grew up near Fargo on a farm. And actually, Patrick, my husband, and I recently, last summer, went to the farmer's market, which was really incredible. There's a bunch of colleges in Fargo, and they have a really vibrant farmer's market. It rivals, and I would say bests, most of what I have ever seen in Washington, D.C. There's a ton of also things across the state, including next summer, they're going to be opening up the Teddy Roosevelt Presidential Library. So hit the hot spots and let me know what you like. All right, Jake, last one for you. Unsurprisingly, to anyone who listens to this podcast or follows you on Twitter, there were some questions about fish. Here's David. I've had some exposure to fish, but not enough to have any real level of familiarity. If I wanted to get more familiar, where should I start? Is there a particular album, song, or do I have to go to a concert because they're known for live improvisation?
You don't have to go to a concert. I would suggest you do go to a concert, although they're skipping Washington, D.C., the greater Washington area this summer. I would go, you could go on Spotify and you could find a lot of live fish shows throughout time. I would choose something from 1997 or 1998, a very good vintage of fish shows, and then you could move in. That's called Fish 2.0, Fish 3.0. Is that 2.0? I'm not actually sure, but I mess that up sometimes. And then I would move into post 2009, which is that is definitely Fish 3.0. That is post their 2004 breakup when they got back together in 2009. I would say everything post 2009 is good and current. They are on tour now tonight, Anna. They are in Austin, Texas. Probably pretty warm in Austin, Texas, but they're indoors. What I'll tell you, Anna, and then we can wrap this up, is I have not taken any fish show off the table for the summer. I cannot rule out going to any of them. So we will see how it all works out. We'll see what Congress does. All of them are just a short flight away.
As someone who's seen you jam out at a fish show, be on the lookout, folks. Jake just might be popping up across the country this summer. All right, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. If you like the Daily Punch, please share it on social media. Tell your friends. It's the best way for folks to find out about us. And of course, you can go deeper on all these issues and more by signing up for our free morning newsletter at punchbowl.news. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.